In this video, we're going to learn about the magic wand and Redwork tools. And those are found up at the top. Beside the auto digitizing wizard, you've got your magic wand and your Redwork tool. And notice that these tools are currently dimly lit or kind of grayed out. And that means you can't currently use that tool until we first have a backdrop. These are about sort of creating artwork from a backdrop image. And so first of all, we would need to add a backdrop to our workspace. And there's really several ways to add a backdrop to your workspace. One of which would be to click on your open tool and open a JPEG or open a BMP image. Another way would be to click on the backdrop tool, and when there is no backdrop on your workspace, the backdrop tool would also kind of pop up that open window to open a backdrop. Another way is to go to your backdrop library, and so the backdrop library is simply a special place in your computer that has a gallery of backdrop images. I'll go ahead and click on the backdrop library, and these are the images that came with the software. It's the same, Dragonfly that we use to auto digitize, or Flamingo. And this time, if I click on it and select it and say open, it simply puts that Dragonfly on our screen as a backdrop. And by a backdrop, I mean like as a picture. It's not really part of the embroidery. If I zoom in, you can see that we brought that Dragonfly in, and if I look really closely at it, you can see that there's a lot of different shades of blue in that image, and not just the three that the auto digitizer had selected. And the idea here is, in this video, we're going to learn about the magic wand and the Redwork tool, which are like auto tracing tools. And perhaps to make that a little bit easier, we might want to move that backdrop from where it has sort of arrived on our workspace. And if you want to interact with the backdrop, then you click on your backdrop tool. And so the backdrop tool will select whatever backdrop you have, and if you don't have a backdrop, it'll open up the open window to choose one. But once it's selected, I could click and drag to move it, or grab a corner and click and drag to resize it. And so I can make that Dragonfly kind of any size I want. I can also rotate the image to be on any angle that I want to. And so this is the idea that you can interact with the backdrop. And we'll make another video that's like all about the backdrop tool and some of the other things you can do with the backdrop. Like, for example, right click, and there is a menu of options for your backdrop, like define horizon and define scale, or load backdrop. So choose a new backdrop, delete your backdrop, edit the backdrop. So that's going to like open your backdrop up in a editing program like Microsoft Paint, or something else that you may have chosen, and the properties for that. So basically there are some backdrop properties. We'll learn more about those in another video, but for today, let's look at the tools. The source of this video is the magic wand and the Redwork, and notice that they're now available. And even if I click on my select tool to let go of the backdrop, so remember what I just said, to interact with the backdrop, once I clicked on my select tool, it's no longer selectable, right? It's simply part of the background, and it's an image, but it's in our background. And that is different than if we click on the backdrop tool. Now we can interact with that image size and location, etc., etc. So once I have a backdrop on my workspace, those tools become available. And so if I click on the magic wand tool, it will let go of the backdrop, and notice that my cursor has now become like an actual magic wand, and I can simply click to have the software trace around an area of the design. And you'll notice here on the left-hand side towards the bottom, there's a button that says toggle view backdrop, and basically that's like show hide backdrop. And so you can see when I hide it that, yeah, it traced that. And if I show it again and I still have that magic wand tool, I can click to trace and then hide, and oh look, there are wings. and I can select that wing and decide kind of what style of stitching I want them to be just from the list at the bottom. And so that is kind of the cool thing about the magic wand tool, is it will auto trace. Now it's going to, I'm sorry, it's going to, the better the artwork, the better the auto trace is what I'm trying to say. If you look at the backdrop and you look at it very closely, the auto tracing is kind of only so good based upon how good those lines are, right? How pixelated they are. So basically, the better your image that you start out with, kind of the smoother the auto tracing is going to turn out. But this is where the whole software really combines well, because if you select this image, you also have the shape tool. And so if you felt that it wasn't smooth enough for any reason, you could come in and select those points and perhaps delete some if there were too many, or select them and right click and tell it to smooth. And so those are things that we learned when we went through kind of the edit toolbar and we talked about the shape tool. I'm simply saying that once something's auto digitized, whether you use the auto digitizing wizard or the magic wand tool, the software did part of the work, but you can still edit away, and so click on your magic wand to auto trace. Now the Redwork tool is kind of the opposite of the magic wand, but the same. So the Redwork tool is also going to trace your area, whatever color that you click on, but instead of drawing around the outside, it's going to try and draw down the middle. So notice if I click on the sort of center body, it added a line down the center of it, and it's meant for like when you have outline style designs, like coloring book type pictures that are all black outlines, that you could use the Redwork tool to allow the software to kind of find the centers of those lines. And so that's the idea with the two sort of instant click artwork tools, that you can click on one or the other, and they only work over top of a backdrop. So they won't do anything for you over top of embroidery. They're not going to auto trace embroidery stitches. They simply auto trace colors as part of your backdrop. And once those colors are selected or traced, then you can easily select them and choose kind of your style of embroidery and the color as well, because it doesn't automatically pick up any colors from the image. So it simply traces them in whatever colors that you're working with. And so you can, of course, select those areas and change their colors to be the different colors and recolor your design. And so that's the idea, and that's your hide and show backdrop tools. So a little bit about the backdrop tool in this video, and also about the Redwork and the magic wand tools.